Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show. My name is Matt, your host, and today my guest is Collin MEEVES. Coach Collin. He's a husband, father, and lifestyle and health coach. He helps husbands and fathers get rid of distraction and overwhelm in their life while reclaiming their time and energy. And he is, in fact, my guest today. Collin, how are you?
Matt, I'm doing well. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm really stoked to have you on the show. A little bit about the how we met story is we were actually going through the same business mentoring group at the beginning of this year. So we're on our both in our for all intents and purposes rookie years as far as being full-time coaches. Maybe incorrect with that on you. I think perhaps you're just expanding on your coaching. Definitely for me though. So in any event, we were on the Strong Coach program together, really hit it off, had a connection right away. And yeah, this podcast a little bit long time coming. We talked about this, I believe, in that first Curiosity game that you and I did, so which was really cool. So here we are some months later, and yeah, dude, it's just really great to reconnect. And I want to hear more about what's going on with you nowadays. But before we do, as per usual on the show here, I love to just give the audience a little bit of a chance to get to know you and your origin story, how you got into coaching. And there is definitely some stories with, substance abuse in your family, as it seems to be in everybody's family, so you can get into. And dude, congratulations. I want to, go on record as saying, I think you're coming up on your 6 months free, or 6 months of alcohol free. So congrats on that. And dude, I'll let you take the reins from here, but just tell us a little bit about Collin.
Yeah, definitely. Where to start? Well, I am Collin, and I'm 31, about to be 32 years old. I'm married. I've been married for just over 3 years, and I have a daughter named Reagan. She just turned 2 last month in September. So husband and father. As far as origin story, I mean, the next thing I would say after husband and father is I'm a coach. And how did I get to becoming a coach? And one thing that I'm not sure if you mentioned it in the opening here, but coach is the only job title that I've ever held. There's no other job that I've ever done. And it's something I'm very proud of. I started coaching right out of high school and started coaching baseball. So growing up, I played an abundance of different sports, anything that you can think of, the traditionals of baseball, basketball, football, soccer. And I did even some of the eclectic ones of BMX racing, taekwondo, and I'm just playing outside like a 90s kid, skateboarding, rollerblading. I did everything active that you could possibly think of. And I had a great time growing up. It was awesome. I loved moving my body. I loved being active. I loved playing sports. And as I was nearing the end of high school, I was only playing baseball at the time. So once I got to high school, I really niched down into baseball and had every sort of dream of playing college baseball, going pro, just like every other kid. And as I got out of high school, I was really burnt out on baseball and did not want to continue playing anymore. So the next best thing to playing was to coach it. So that's how I got into coaching initially. And it was my first paid job that I ever had as well. Started coaching baseball at my high school that I went to. And that's what really sparked my coaching career. And I've been in it ever since.
Yeah, super cool, super cool. So what is your team? Because you're down in California, right?
Yeah, that's a great question.
There's a few teams down there. And by the way, born and raised in California, are you?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So my parents are actually born and raised in Iowa in the Midwest. They moved out to California and stayed out here. My sister and I were both born out here. So where I currently live is 5 minutes away from where I grew up. So
No way.
I am just literally one town over from the town that I grew up in. And as much of a hometown kid as you can think of. I went to college right down the street as well. So I did everything in the immediate area around here.
And so what would be like the closest baseball team? Like, who are you rooting for? At time of recording, where the baseball playoffs are really heating up here. Who is your team? Who's your team?
That's a great question. The closest team geographically to me is the they're called the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, which makes no sense. So um, that's
Yeah.
I growing up, I was an Angels fan, but once that whole name change transpired of the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, I just said like, hey, I'm out of here. I can't do this anymore. So really, I don't pay attention to baseball all that much anymore.
Interesting.
So I don't claim any fandom to any team. I just enjoy watching it when I get a chance to.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm a your typical bandwagon jumper. So Blue Jays were my team growing up. 92, 93 Blue Jays was like the most
Yeah.
epic team, right? Very unfortunate what happened to them a few days ago. I don't know if you were paying attention to that. The Mariners, they were up on 8-1 in the game, and the Mariners came back to win 10-9 in what
Oh
ended up
wow.
being the biggest comeback in playoff history for a road team to beat the home team. So that was yeah, that was a little disappointing to end the season that way. In any event, yeah, just curious about that. Cool. So yeah, you went to coaching. That was your first paid gig. You really enjoyed it. What were some of the elements about coaching that you like, and are those still the same things that you like about coaching nowadays, or how is it? How has that profession expanded with you and experientially?
Yeah, to answer that question, where I'd really start is actually my coaching started before I started coaching. And I say that because every team that I was on, I was the leader of sorts, but I wasn't the outspoken leader. I was the leader by example. Um, and I start there because that's like I really enjoyed being a leader on each team.
Mm-hmm.
Not in an egotistical way by any means. Like I loved the idea of being able to support other people, help them grow, help them develop. If I had something to offer to them that would help them, I that's something that I always craved doing. And as I got into high school, there's the opportunity through our high school baseball program to help with little kids baseball camps, so on and so forth. And like that's where I really started to get this introduction into coaching and working with other kids, or working with kids, I should say, in baseball. And as I got into coaching high school baseball, um, what I really enjoyed was thinking about myself when I was, because I coached freshmen in high school, so their first year in high school. When I was thinking about myself in those shoes, is like, what did I really desire? And did I enjoy teaching them fundamentals about baseball? Did I enjoy teaching them how to do things given this scenario in baseball? Yes. But what I really enjoyed was being that figure for them to come to and, have someone to talk to, for lack of better words, and just be a support for them, not only in baseball, but as they're navigating, this transition into high school and anything that may come up at school and in their life, so on and so forth. Is like I really found myself enjoying connecting with those kids on person to person basis.
Yeah, that's really cool. So to summarize, it's kind of like, you saw an opportunity area of where it was sort of lacking where you had grown up, and you kind of wish that you'd had, somebody like you to mentor yourself, if you get what I mean. So, and then
Hmm.
so you saw that as an opportunity, and okay, this is a great way to help these kids out. I'm just kind of curious too, like, what is it about coaching that is so that you really speaks to you like that way? Is it seeing people have these aha moments, or is it like a long term watch them develop, or is it sort of all the above? Like, what are the specifics that really spoke to you? Because that not a lot of people find their calling so early on in their life,
Hmm.
right? Like in their teenage years. So what was it about that just seemed like such a good fit for you?
It's a great question. I want to answer the simple way and say all the above,
All the above.
but at the same time, there are certain things, is like in the same sense that, and I imagine most coaches have gone through this. They experience hardship, they experience challenge, and they find their way out of that challenge. It necessarily, speaking from personal experience, was not always an easy road. Is like try different things and figure it out. So, seeing people succeed in a way that you thought you were going to succeed. Like to give
Ooh.
them your experience and to give them the insight that you gained on that more zigzag of a road. And they still need to get their experience in, but to see them go through and experience the change that they want to in a way that they never thought possible.
Ooh, very good answer. I like that a lot. That's super cool. So, and then how much of what you provide as coaching somehow gets reciprocated back to you? Because I'm hearing a lot of, your own experience that you pass on, and you see, this experience happen with the person that you're coaching. How much of that reflects back to you and actually helps you improve yourself as not only a coach but as a person? It seems very reciprocal, the experience that you have.
Yeah, reciprocal is definitely. And even still now, it's like, dude, I am finding myself going back to the basics of everything that I coach on and keep continuing to refine it. It's like, I wouldn't say I see it as this way specifically, but it's like this accountability. Is that
Mm.
like I've lived through it and I've found my way out. I'm sharing it with them, but it's like it is a reminder to me to continue to focus on the foundation and continue to build the foundation. So that's how it reciprocates to me beyond the mental and emotional side of it, the fulfillment that I get from it, but also the reminder to continue the path and the journey in my own life. Is that, and I talk about this a lot with the clients that I work with, is that life is this continuum. You have when you enter the world and when you exit the world, and it continues to move that entire time. And if there's a point in time for me as a coach where I feel stuck, is that I remind myself of that continuum that I talk to my clients about, is that it's a journey and you're consistently on that journey and continually moving forward. And there's always this opportunity to continue to go back to the basics and foundation to continue that journey and continue yourself moving forward in the direction that you want to go.
Mm. Yeah, no, that's powerful stuff. And I'm hearing you talk to you, it's about, there's a degree of like when you're mentioning your own zigzag approach, and you're hoping to make it a little more linear for the person that you're coaching so they don't, go off the rails perhaps as much as you did in certain aspects. So where's the fine line between, sitting back and allowing somebody, because certainly there is, there's some strength that comes from, failure and picking yourself back up versus, helping them and coaching them. So where is that fine line? Or does it sort of depend on the person? Does it depend on the lesson that they have to, not necessarily have to learn, but can learn from a certain situation? And like, is that sort of just an intuition thing that you know when to draw back from that? Or how does that look for you?
It's a really good question. And it does vary from person to person. Everyone has their differences in terms of how their personality is, their tolerance, their exposure to things. And the one word that comes to mind when you ask this question is boundaries. Is that each person, you're giving them a different set of boundaries. And the purpose of the boundaries, and in my opinion, your role as a coach is to set the boundaries for them. And it's the same thing with parenting a child. And I've learned that this is what's really taught me is my daughter, and raising her over the last couple of years, is that my objective as a parent is to set boundaries for her so she can learn how to live life safely. And it's the same thing with coaching, is that you're setting these boundaries, or there's these parameters for them to live within. And some people have wider boundaries because they have a little bit more tolerance to challenge, to the ability to learn and express themselves. And some people, their boundaries are not as wide. But you learn with each client where their boundaries lie and how you can keep them moving forward on their journey. Because yes, some need to experience challenge, but to some, one challenge may be too much challenge and you're setting them back. So it does vary from person to person, but really it's about boundaries. And when I think of those boundaries, the principle that I find that allows them to understand where boundaries are is that most things come down to choices. And you either have a choice to go this way or a choice to go this way. And when you can influence them to look through that lens and understand that they're always given a, not always, but most times they're given a choice to go one way or the other, that's giving them a set of boundaries to work within, because
Mm.
you're narrowing the scope and their ability to look at things.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. I imagine this is a big part of like so your company, your brand, the aligned lifestyle coaching. You know, the 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 thing I really like about coaching, and imagine it's the same with you, is like it is so nuanced to person. There's some broad strokes you can use, as far as like some, broad strokes of what is healthy, what is not, where you get like pretty like binary with certain things. But then when you actually get into the person and you talk about boundaries, can be very different for different people, or even just can be similar up to a point, but then there's a certain emotional button that gets pushed, and all of a sudden that person has a boundary that you wouldn't have perhaps expected, right? So this whole like idea of coaching and creating a program for somebody has to be very nuanced and allowing a co-creating essentially with them, and the way they can show up can be different from day to day as well, right? So it's yeah, how does that show up as far as like if you have your mindset like later on I am going to do a program, or for example if you're on social media and so you're trying to reach as many people as you can, but at the same token realizing that there isn't a one size fits all basically for the coaching. Like how does that show up with you in the way that you're presenting yourself?
Yeah, and I've learned that lesson many of different times of trying to make my message to appeal to everybody, right? And I imagine that every coach has gone through that. And if they haven't gone through that, good on them that they learned that early.
Yeah.
But how does that shape how does that shape? Remind me of the question. Do you mind repeating it again?
Yeah, for sure. So if basically it's more of a comment or just a sort of an idea to go off of, is like, there can be some broad strokes, but ultimately when you have a one-on-one with somebody, it's going to be very nuanced
Mm,
to a lot of different things, their body type, the things they've gone through in their life. So yeah, just being basically what sort of tools that you use to be able to navigate the nuances of person to person
mm,
versus like coaching in a group, for example.
yeah. And there are principles that overlap between group and one-on-one coaching, of course. But the main thing that I've really learned and that was really highlighted in Freedom and the Strong Coach is curiosity,
Mm.
and getting really curious. But I would say that something that even prefaces that is to slow down.
Mm.
And I slow down are two words that have been super impactful and influential on my life in so many different ways. But I say those two words because when you're slowing down, you're more apt to listen. And then when you're listening, you're going to be more curious. And I know I personally have not gone through and lifted, but I know Mark England has had said this, that answers push and questions pull. And when you're pushing someone, is you're pushing them away, but when you're pulling someone, is you're bringing them in closer. So when you could slow down and you can listen and you can be curious and ask questions and come from a place of you know authenticity and genuine curiosity, then you're going to be able to know where to go, how to approach the person, and the general approach that they need. Because, like you mentioned, that may vary from person to person. What worked on my call earlier today may not work on my call later today, but when you're slowing down and you're listening, you're going to be able to recognize that as opposed to just trying to just word vomit on them the whole time.
Mm. Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I like it. I like it a lot. I'll come back to the whole authenticity thing. I like to have that towards the end of the episode, just what your take is on it. I get so many different answers on it, so I've written this
Yeah.
down to get back to it. I want to switch gears a little bit here. I'm going to be airing this on both my shows, but Beyond Recovery specifically. I want to get into this, and we did mention your. First off, I guess we'll start with how do you feel after? Well, okay, we're going to go even further back than that. What was your relationship with drinking alcohol before this 5+ month, coming up on 6 months alcohol free? What did that look like for you?
Yeah. Off the air before the show started, I'd referenced that my father was an alcoholic. So, my relationship with drinking goes back to when I'm a kid, not me drinking, but my exposure to it. And, um, as I was growing up, initially I wasn't aware of this, right? I wasn't aware that my father had the habits around drinking that he did. It wasn't until, I mean, from my memory, his drinking really started when I was like 6 or 7.
Mm.
And it wasn't until I was like, yeah, getting into middle school and high school that I started to really have a grasp on it. And really, not until I got into college that I really understood, at that point, what it really meant. So from 6 years old until he had passed when I was 26, it's about 20 years of seeing my father as an alcoholic. It created this relationship with drinking that two different things. One, I'm never going to be like that. Two, it was in that same idea of I'm never going to be like that. There's always this subconscious fear of how much drinking is too much, and I oftentimes, when I was younger and getting into, like drinking and at the end of high school before turning 21, and then you go out and you're legally drinking, just, it wasn't anything. It was just over my head. It was just like, hey, I'm having a good time. But it was definitely as I reached into my, like mid-20s that, and I know I wouldn't admit it at the time, but I was very judgmental on myself about my drinking, about you're always drinking too much. Why are you drinking? And that why wasn't more of a judgmental question, is more of a curiosity. Like, why am I drinking? And for the longest time, that judgment was me thinking about other people and how I'm drinking, and more than anything else. And then after, I would say when I was like, especially after my dad died, that's when that question of like, or the thought of more of the judgment was like personal, where I'm like, okay, like I am drinking consistently, and I can see where that line that draw the line like is starting to become more and more faded, where it's just like, the drinking, it became less intentional in the sense of like just being social, so on and so forth. And to be on the record, like I never drank daily or anything like that, but I became so aware of my habits that I could see how easily that line was starting to fade, and I can easily go in the other direction.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that, and thanks for being just so honest about it. So, coming out the other side, how are you feeling now? Is this the longest, sobriety or alcohol-free stint that you've had this last 5, 6 months, or had you done that before?
I would definitely say the longest stint um, since I've becoming like of legal age drinking.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Like definitely when I was in high school and even college, like I wasn't a partier by any means. I didn't really enjoy going to house parties or anything like that. So there's definitely like periods of time where I didn't drink, but getting into like the age of 21 and into my 20s, I would say that this is the longest that I have gone without a drink, and I'm very proud of that.
Dude, as you should be. Yeah, I'm so proud of you as well. Like, and it's amazing, How has that shown up in your life now? Like, what can you say is different, subtle or otherwise? How you're presenting yourself, how you're showing up. What kind of differences has it made?
So many.
Cool, cool.
The one thing that really tuned me into this idea of wanting to not drink, and I didn't recognize it till probably it would be almost a year later, is like I just remember every day after I drank, I would be depressed.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like and there's one day in June of 2021, so not this year, but last year. And I remember it being after a wedding that my wife and I had gone to, and like had a great time. And the next day I was just so depressed. And it was just why am I depressed? And that day I didn't understand it,
Mm.
but it to fast forward to us going through the freedom program, and this is going to all tie together here, is that the big thing there is understanding your time and energy, and understanding what you're putting energy into and what you're getting back from it. And, as going through that course is 4 months, and I got so in tune with certain things about where I was spending energy with social media, so on and so forth. And it wasn't until the latter part of that course where I was just like, what is drinking doing for me? Like, how is it really helping me show up and build the business that I want? How is it helping me show up as a husband and father? And there was no answer that I can give myself. And it was just like, okay, like there's really no reason for me to have this in my life that I see. It's not bringing anything positive to the table right now. And I share all that because how it's helped me show up is that in that time, I've become so much more present. My mood, my energy is that much more consistent. I am able to think more clearly. I want to go to sleep earlier. I want to wake up at certain time each morning. I'm a better husband. I'm a better father, and I am just that much more like, you know, even keeled, and more in tune with myself.
Awesome, awesome. I love hearing that, and it's really going to resonate with folks that, I do have some folks that are, sort of that sober curious, and they're listening to the show, and it's always so reinforcing to hear different people's reasons for doing it, and how bright and how much, like you say, more present, and how your relationships are so much more enhanced as a husband and as a father because of doing this, right? So thanks for sharing that. That's an amazing story, and dude, you should be proud. So that's rad. I want
Thank
to get
you.
back to, yeah, you bet. I want to get back to that side of things for you, that being like a father, a 2-year old. She just turned 2 in September, as you mentioned. How did life change for you then? Now, if I'm going 2 years back, I mean, that was a pretty crazy time to be having a kid, right? Like right in the
Hmm.
heart of this whole pandemic that we've lived through. What sort of changes has that made in your life? And I know that's a big part of what you're doing now, as far as your specific, niche that you're working with, as far as like, husbands and fathers and such. So how has that shown up? How's life changed for you being a father now?
My life has changed a lot, and I'll keep the long story short. Is that my wife and I found out that we were going to have a kid on December 31st, 2019. Um, on New Year's Eve, we had just gotten married that year in July. And I was over the moon excited, like it was something that we had planned. And I was so ready to have a kid. And as it flipped over into 2020, I started thinking a lot about how I wanted to show up as a father for my child. And, at that time, I thought I was working at the place that I wanted to work for the rest of my life. I think I felt like I had everything set up where I'm like, let's just have this kid and enjoy our life. And January, February comes, and I start to notice this like anxiousness around me. And what I really was thinking of, like, I want to be this guide and support for my child to be on their journey and figure out who they are without me impressing my beliefs on them, and just facilitate their growth and chase their dreams and passions. And there I was, and it all just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I'm like, I'm not even doing that. And because I wanted to coach, yes, but like I was coaching at a CrossFit gym at the time, but it's like I had this love for personal development and really like diving deep with people. And like I wasn't in that environment, in that setting to do that. And I share this because then in March 2020, everything shuts down. I'm extracted out of that physical environment that I'm in every day at the gym. And I'm just like, dude, I like went off the deep end. I'm like, I'm not happy. I am so burnt out. I'm not doing what I'm really wanting to do. What the fuck, man? Like, I'm having a kid. And I went from so ready and so happy. And there's this picture of me, like in the background of my wife, like this. And, when we were taking pictures of the announcement, and like this frame immediately changed to like, oh shit, and to basically take that March until my daughter was born in September was just me being like debilitatingly depressed, anxious. And I'm like, dude, I need to make every big change that I can possibly think about
Mm,
with my kid on the way. So I
wow.
decided to I decided that I was not going to work at the gym that I was working at. And I'd been there for almost 8, 9 years, and I thought I was going to work there for the rest of my life. That gym was me, and I was that gym.
Mm,
And I made a decision to no longer work there at the end of 2020. I made that decision in August. My daughter was born in September of 2020. And yeah, but like all up until that point, we were in our home, just my wife and I, because I wasn't
yeah.
sure what the effect of COVID on pregnancy. And my wife was an ICU nurse. So it's just a lot
Right.
of different things. Whereas, like, there's a lot of uncertainty. And I just thought, why not bring more uncertainty into this and just make a total life change right now? Um, so I said I was going to make that short, but
Yeah.
basically, my daughter coming into this world made me really reevaluate my life in this from the standpoint of how am I able to better show up for her in the long term? Because with
Mm,
how burnt out I was not a happy person to be around. I was not pleasant, and I didn't want to create this environment like I grew up in, and to translate, I didn't want to create that environment. What I wanted to do is I wanted to be a present and supportive father
mhm.
for my child and what I found to be my daughter, and have that availability and flexibility to do what I wanted when I wanted with her. And so, how my daughter influenced my life was to just make this radical change that I would not suggest anybody to do when their wife is pregnant. But speaking from the coaching perspective, I took the knocks on that one for you guys, so I can coach you through it.
There we go.
And there's so many things about my daughter in these last 2 years, and especially as of late, that, like, man, take a breath here, get emotional thinking about it. And
Yeah.
it's amazing when you are able to watch someone live out their first couple of years of life and experience that again. It is one of the greatest teaching tools that, like, dude, there are so many things that us as humans worry about and consume our mind, that, like, it takes us away from what's right in front of us and the beauty of it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's an amazing story. I'm glad you expanded on it because, like, to me, the way I'm hearing this, and I hadn't heard this, all these details, of your story. It seems very much like the origin story of your business, right? So you had been working, as a whether a freelancer or an employee, right? As far as with this other gym, and yeah, man, to take that on during such a tumultuous time as it was, throwing the pregnancy, and now you're going to completely change basically take on your own business in
Mm-hmm.
amongst that's pretty crazy story. So I'm really glad that we took the time to do that, and the reasons that you're doing it are so you know just so important, right? You're playing the long game for your daughter, and it really comes back to it. It immediately made me think of one of the first things that you said that you like about coaching in the first place, or what even your earlier leadership, being on the team, the baseball teams, is like leading by example, right? So that being a very showing up early in your life as a big thing for you, and now it's echoing well into your adulthood and into your career and parenting as well, leading by examples, and it's coaching, embodying what you coach essentially, right? So, which we talked about a lot
Mm-hmm.
on Strong Coach too, is like if you're working 70 hours a week and not giving yourself time to replenish, and then you're going to your it's incongruent, right? And then you go to your clients and tell them, oh no, you gotta, meanwhile they're looking at you and you're all high strung and you're not happy, right? So you made those changes in order to be that person that is living in alignment, pardon the pun, just in congruency with what you view as the person that you wanted to become, the dad, the husband that you wanted to become. So yeah, it's a really great story, man. So thanks for sharing that side of it.
Yeah, you're welcome. And it's one thing I'll add to that is that in that time, I didn't think that decision was a crazy decision. I didn't think anything that I was about to do was crazy. It wasn't until I was on the other side of it that I'm like, okay,
Like
this is not just a bit crazy.
yeah,
This is fucking crazy.
this is
And
out there.
yeah, it but in my shoes now, I wouldn't change any of it.
Yeah.
I really wouldn't. And even that leadership thing, how my daughter change or how things changed for me is, like, I started to embody this role as a leader of, like, the ultimate leader for me is not just leading myself, but being a leader for my family.
Mm,
and all those same principles ring true of what you just said is like, yeah, it just that leadership role within a family is so integral. And I'm not the only leader. My wife is also a leader in our family, and our kids, our kid, and maybe potentially other kids in our family will also be contributions to the leadership in our family as well. But if there's this lack of alignment from one person, then the whole unit is going to be thrown off too. You know,
yeah.
um, yeah. So that was just a couple of things that popped in my mind, even as you're sharing that went through my mind during that transition.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And the whole aligned lifestyle coaching, like basically how long has that been around? Was that essentially what you jumped into? You had that title right away as far as the branding and such. Was that pretty much right off the bat, or what was there a little bit of like you mentioned transition to kind of okay, I know what I want to do, but there's so many options when you first start any journey or venture, isn't there? So how quickly did the aligned lifestyle come to fruition?
I would say the aligned lifestyle has been in my head for a long time. 2016, 2017, 2018, the conceptualization of it was there.
Oh, okay.
With that being said, when I finished working at the gym in end of 2020, literally my last day was December 31st, 2020, and I switched over to January 1st, 2021, the aligned lifestyle coaching was not a thing
Hmm.
because I felt like I was an imposter. All that imposter syndrome was coming in. As much as I wanted to serve people beyond the fitness, I was not leaning into that initial discomfort and committing to that.
Hmm.
And the way that the aligned lifestyle coaching came into existence was actually I started this podcast and I didn't have a name for it. And I just started with the first episode of turning your thoughts into actions. For the longest time, I said I wanted to do a podcast. And that was my first episode, was just going solo on that. And it was while my wife and I were walking our daughter. I'm going to say it was like July 2021, and it just can't, like I was rolling through names, and like the word alignment was something that always, like, it just stuck with me. There was something about it that I'm like, this is like what I view the lens through everything. And I was like, the Aligned Lifestyle Podcast. I Googled it. There was no other podcast with that name, no other anything with that name really. So it just started out as the podcast title. And then that was July of 2021. It wasn't until December of 2021 that I actually created the LLC. And I'm like, I'm doubling down on this name. Like this is what I'm committing to. And that was 1 month before me starting Freedom, which
Mm.
that's where, like, I even at that time, like, I wasn't committed to this like concept of lifestyle coaching. Like I can't do that. You can't do that, Collin. Like, that's all the stuff that was going through my head. So it's been in my mind for a long time, but there's commitment issues for me in it.
Yeah, okay. And that's what I like when I first introduced you at the start of the show. I mean, I identified myself as going through my definitely unquestionably my rookie year as coach. And then I perhaps accidentally lumped you in with that. But the I guess the intention was to, as far as this leg of your journey, right? As far as the aligned lifestyle coaching, you're in that fairly infant period then, right? Like you've probably been the
Yes.
first 12 months. Sounds like, yeah, 12 months, 14 months. Having said that, obviously had the idea for long ago, but the actual like action, yeah, the different level of commitment, as you put it, to paraphrase you, is it's still quite new, correct?
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
would agree that I'm still in my rookie season, man. I
Yeah.
am
Okay.
still learning so much, and I am
Yeah.
still working on, like, narrowing in on what it is that I really want to do with the aligned lifestyle coaching.
Right.
And
Right.
for me, like, the fitness, the health has been such an embodiment in my identity and what people see me as.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like I am super passionate about that, but I know that my ability to serve husbands and fathers is beyond just the health and fitness. Like, it's what's in here for them. And that's where I'm still learning to trust my ability to do that and to build my uh my repetition in doing that as well. So I would wholeheartedly agree. I'm 100% still a rookie in this thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Super cool to watch. Yeah, it's really cool when you have a group of friends and colleagues that you've been close with and have done this type of program like Freedom was, and just to watch how everybody's doing now. We mentioned that in the beginning too, so it's been really cool to watch you continue to grow and learn and just get better at what you're doing. So I noticed too that in conversations that you and I have had, and even on some of the posts that you've done, you're a big, habits guy about like consistency, as far as, about picking times and picking the right things, and not necessarily making this like epic commitment to it. It can be like a 10 minutes a day is a big thing for me. And I know like your Atomic Habits is a big book that I'm
Hmm.
quite certain you've read and I've read, and we've fairly certain you and I have talked about it. In any event, that type of thing. So where do habits show up for you, and how important are these little habits as far as like with yourself and then in turn with your clients?
Yeah, I'm a habit fiend, and I have read Atomic Habits 3 times, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Listened
Yep.
to it, maybe, sorry, I've listened to it twice or read it twice, listened to it once. And it is just so simple. It's just like mind blowing how simple. When I read that book, it was like life changing. And when I was talking just seconds ago about like narrowing down, it's like, dude, I've even thought about like, I would love to be called just a habits coach, like it
Mm,
seems so broad, but yet it's so narrowed down that like habits make up everything that we do. And speaking of me personally, to answer your question is like from the outside looking in, my life, often been said like, oh, you're good at all these things because you're Colin, and it's something that I loved it. The ego in me was just like, yes, keep feeding me, but I share that because as of late I've really embodied the fact that like, dude, I fucking worked hard to create the habits that I have and to be as consistent as I am. And that this concept of habits and how it's shown up in my life, and especially after reading Atomic Habits, was life changing because I was the thrill seeker. I was the person always pushing the boundaries edge. What's the maximum effective dose that I can do? And
mm,
after reading that book and getting an understanding of how simple it is to build habits, I was like, dude, what is the minimum that I need to do for
yeah,
this to have the effectiveness that I need it to be?
yeah.
And I originally listened to Atomic Habits in 2020, but it wasn't until earlier this year in like 2022 that I really started like living into that. And
Mm,
like, but it's how it goes into everything with my coaching too. It's just like, dude, the biggest thing that people have always said about working out is they don't have time.
yeah,
And that's one of the biggest things, but everyone's given the same amount of time. So it's like when you understand like, okay, how can I build a habit and make it long term, is to make it easy. And it's like in our human nature, it's like, no way, like that cannot be true, but it totally is. And after a while, because the same thing, there's this lack of alignment with my coaching. I'm like telling people, hey, it's super simple, just do the small things. But there I was, just taking everything to the edge, getting burnt out after a while. So I was like, dude, something's got to change. So I just started adopting this mindset of like, what's the minimum effective dosage that I need? How simple can I make this so that way I can do this every fucking day,
mm,
every day?
yeah,
And that is what changed me, and that's what has changed me and how I work with my clients. Where instead I used to like want to give them like what the coolest thing was and what the sexiest thing was, where now I'm just like, okay, what's the least amount that you think you need to do with that?
yeah,
And then I'll agree with them like, yeah, that's how we make it long term. And
yes,
then they're like, dude, this is great. They're on the coaching call, and then a few days later they're like, I've worked out every day since then, and it's like,
yeah,
whereas like, hey,
yeah,
let's just focus on a 10-minute walk each day.
yeah,
And it's just back to the boundaries thing. It's like, set these boundaries to make a habit super simple.
yeah, for sure. I love that, man. And the one thing that came to mind in Atomic Habits that summarizes, actually, there's two things I want to say about it. The first one is like you mentioned, if you want to get in the habit of flossing your teeth, even just doing like flossing one tooth, and it just sounds like, nah, there's no way that's gonna work, right? yeah, and then it shows you like, man, that was like, it took me like 2 seconds, and before you know it, you're flossing your whole, and it's just like, it seems so simple that it's like almost too simple to work, but dude, does it ever make a huge difference? Oh yeah, the other one that I really liked out of there, and it was like he was citing something else, but I just, the first time I'd heard it was in the context of the book of Atomic Habits, was, the idea of, there was like an art class, and there was the art class that had, group one was to create one project to hand in at the end of the semester, and then group B was, to hand in just everything, just keep experimenting, keep playing, and you're going to get graded by how much you actually hand in versus that one quote unquote perfect project of group A. And group A was like paralyzed by, like perfection and all this type of thing. A majority of the group didn't even hand anything in because they just overanalyzed everything, versus group B, which was just like trying everything and just shoveling it in. And before you know it, they all got passing grades and then some, and actually created some of the highest graded stuff because they were just in there messing it up and getting after it. Right. So that one really resonated with me, the quantity over quality, and the idea that, like, the more that you spend in time on dwell on things and compare and get into that egoic kind of brain, dude, it's just like, it makes such a difference. So those are two massive takeaways from that book. But yeah, you're right, that whole book is just like, could be like a textbook in a lot of ways, couldn't it?
Yeah. And even as you're talking about that, I'm like, I thought of one thing and then I thought of another thing from the book, and that's how it always
Yeah,
works. But this is
right.
the one thing from that book that has always stood out to me, besides the framework that he provides, is to fall in love with boredom.
Mm.
And I love that, because people will be like, what? Why do I want to fall in love with boredom? And then my next thing is, what's not boring is getting results
Mm.
and being consistent, because that's what like falling in love with boredom is, to keep it simple, and like, yes, you may be bored from time to time doing something every day, but it's not boring is when you're on December 31st and you're like, I walk 10 minutes every day this year.
Yep.
That's not boring, because once you do something, it's going to snowball into something else. And that's where, like, this has been so life changing for me, is like me not drinking alcohol for almost 6 months. Like, that started as just one day.
Right.
And then here we are, I'm not sure how many days, 6 months is exactly, but about
Yeah.
180,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, pretty
and
close.
so fall in love with boredom, because getting results and being consistent is not boring.
Dude, and you know what really comes up for me, and it's the same, it's a great comparison, and I love that, is so the I think the world's most famous investor is, oh, I already forget his name. What's the guy's name? He's
Warren
old.
Buffett
Yes, thank you. My
or
goodness.
Charlie Munger, one of the two.
Oh, it's Buffett. Yeah, that's who I was thinking of anyways. And so his whole idea is that investment is boring. It isn't this day trading stuff where you're just doing, like you said, the sexy thing and blah blah blah, and like trying to outsmart the. It's set it, forget it, and before you know it, and this is in Atomic Habits as well. And for listeners, I'm going to do, it's kind of like the exponential growth. So it starts off super slow, super slow, and then all of a sudden, boom, you have like that hockey stick uptick. And that's what you're talking about. 10 minutes at the end of the year, 10 minutes a day is going to be 61 hours. And that's
Mm-hmm.
1% of your day. 10 minutes is 1% of the day, the time that you're awake. So by the end of the year, you've done something every day. So you've shown consistency, you have trust within yourself, and it accumulates to 61 hours. Like, that's pretty substantial amount of time. 61 hours that you probably wouldn't have otherwise been walking, right? So dude, yeah, this could be a whole nother show. This is going off about this stuff.
It could be, yeah, for sure. Is like,
Yeah.
because like that one day could turn into 10 straight years of you doing it.
Right?
And even if it's not 10 straight years, let's take the idea of perfection out of there, because perfection does not exist.
Right.
If you were to do, let's just say on average, you missed 5 days a year. Still think of the success rate that you had. Dude,
Right.
you are still like 97% successful.
Yeah.
It's like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It really is. And yeah, I love how we brought this up towards the end here. So the other thing, the final thing that I'm actually curious to see how this shows up, or if it shows up with you, that I noticed from that book as well, as cues. So he even
Mm.
mentioned, he's like, okay, if you want to get into running and we tend to I put up some resistance for myself, for example. Okay, yeah, but then I gotta blah blah blah. These excuses start coming up. So what he suggests is I take my running shoes and put them beside my bed, or have this like cue. So you basically, I trip over them in the morning, and it's just like they're
Hmm.
right there. I'm like, you may as well put my feet in them. They're like in line with me going to the bathroom, go for a morning run, boom, done. So like cues like that, just things that'll set you up or remind you that you've made that agreement with yourself. And again, just make it easier, and you can kind of have some fun with it too, right? Do you use cues, sticky notes, anything like this?
I do, and it's a variety of different things. Depending on what I'm doing. Like the thing that I can think about off the top of my head is like how I start in my day is essentially the same as I have a journal that I write in. So my journal just sits out from when I finish it at night till I wake up in the morning. So it's right there.
Cool.
And after the thing about cues that I would say is that oftentimes people will put it away because they're tired of disappointing themselves when they see the cue.
Ooh, yeah.
But
Ooh.
if you keep it out, you'll get tired of the fact that you're not doing what you're doing, and you'll do it. And there's this, what I see in society today is this like want to be comfortable and take the easy route. And it's like the same thing about the 1% better every day and falling in love with boredom is we're so focused here, like what's right in front of us. But if you take a moment to zoom out and like look at the bigger picture of what could be possible, is like, you know what? You're frustrated that you're not like maybe not listening to the cue, but you're not taking in the cue, that you just put it away because that's an easy thing to do. But instead, keep the cue there so you see it, because eventually you'll get tired of the fact that you're not doing it. So sorry, that's where my mind went with that. But do I use cues? Yes, I do use cues everywhere.
Yeah. It's so interesting, it's like, I love that. That's like getting to that next level, because like normally, I think that's phase one, we'll call it, would be like, I'm so tired. This is just making me feel bad about myself. Throw it in the drawer. Whereas if you just waited that little bit longer into phase two, you just be like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to start doing this. And then before you know it, it's party. Yeah. So I love that.
So how about this real quick on that, because I know you've gone through and lifted, is that if you think about that first phase that you just mentioned, and it's like that judgment on yourself and those thoughts going through your head where you're like, you just give into them and put the shoes away. If you were to take a moment and just write out what's going through your head, what you may realize or understand is not that you hate yourself. You're just going to highlight what you really want. And I shouldn't use hate. Hate's a very strong word there, but that you're like disappointed that you're frustrated in yourself, right? But like we often, the feeling is anger, like we have hatred towards ourselves. But if you were to take a moment and just separate yourself from those thoughts, I imagine that what would come out of those thoughts is this strong desire for you to want to do what that cue is setting you up to do.
Yeah, 100%. And that's what's below that. That self-loathing or that, self-judgment is actually that thing that's still got his hand up and like, no, this is still what you want. This is what we want, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
Sorry. That's what came to my mind, and I wanted to share that on that topic because I imagine it's very, very important for a lot of people.
Absolutely. And you know what? This is great that we're doing this interview at the time. Timing's everything, and we had a bit of a lapse of communication, but here we are reconnecting, and we're heading into the holiday season, and like your style of coaching loans so well to folks, heading into the holidays, where it can be very triggering for people. Coming out of the holiday season for the beginning of January, it's like, okay, new year, new me. There's so many people that, will be setting new, I guess new boundaries, new guidelines, new, like the resolutions is kind of a tacky word, as we know, right? And, but yeah, it's really going to start resonating with people when they're hearing a lot of what you're all about. And, the word aligned, I agree with you, just has that, there's something about such a solid word, you know what I mean? So if somebody's listening to this call and really want to just hop on a call with you and just maybe share some of what they're looking to do and through the holiday season or coming out of the carnage that could be the holiday season for them, what's the easiest way to go hold you, and where are you located online?
Yeah, the best way to find me on social media is on Instagram at Collin, 2 L's, COLLIN _ MEEVES, MEE, V as in Victor, ES. That's going to be the place to find me and connect with me. From there, I do have a link that you can click on to schedule a discovery call if you wanted to connect with me and get to know me, for me to get to know you and give you some insight on how I could help you. You can follow the link in my Instagram profile. And I also do have a weekly, I'm actually testing out a bi-weekly email that I'm sending out now. So same thing with that. You can message me on Instagram and I can get you subscribed to that as well.
Rad. Well, I really love what you're doing. I do have one final question. I like to end the podcast with this, and it's been great to see you. Great to reconnect with you. Collin, my question for you: what does authenticity mean to you, and how is it showing up in your life? How can you tell that you're acting authentic versus egoic?
Hmm. Thinking. As far as authenticity, and how would I know if I'm living authentically? Let's just start talking about it, Colin. I'm sitting here like running
Yeah,
through in my head.
oh, it's good. It's good.
Yeah, it's like authenticity is, for me, when I notice authenticity in my life is when I'm in a state of flow,
Mm,
is when I'm moving from one thing to the next. And it's just as if there's no real transition from it. Is that I'm not necessarily switching hats. I'm just showing up as myself, whether I'm showing up as a husband, father, coach, son, brother, friend. It's like I'm just showing up and being myself, and it's represents itself like a state of flow for me.
mm. Very good answer. I like that a lot. Collin, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Wish you all the best, and obviously we're going to be keeping in touch. We're brothers for sure. So really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thank you, man. I appreciate you having me on. And if it lines again, I would love to be on and chat some more with you.
Absolutely. You bet.